Tonight, before you fall asleep, you'll probably check the time without even thinking about it. A glowing number on your phone, a tiny digital clock beside your bed, maybe a smartwatch vibrating softly against your wrist. You'll know whether it's 11:48 p.m. or 2:13 a.m. with perfect precision. But for almost all of human history, those numbers did not exist. For more than 300,000 years, every human being who ever lived survived without clocks, without watches, without digital screens, without even the concept of minutes as we understand them today. Most of your ancestors never knew what 8:37 in the morning meant. Entire civilizations rose and fell without anyone ever hearing an alarm clock. And yet somehow humans still managed to hunt, migrate, plant crops, predict winter, cross oceans, and build monuments aligned so precisely with the sky that modern archaeologists are still stunned by them. So how did ancient humans know time? The answer is stranger than you think, because ancient humans did not experience time the way modern humans do. To them, time was not numbers, it was not schedules, it was not productivity. Time was movement, light, shadow, temperature, birdsong, moon phases, the smell of morning air before sunrise. Time was alive. Long before the first civilization appeared, human survival depended on recognizing patterns in nature with astonishing precision. A hunter-gatherer could not afford to ignore environmental rhythms. The wrong season meant starvation. Leaving camp too late meant being trapped in darkness. Missing an animal migration by even a few days could destroy an entire group's food supply. Modern humans outsourced time to machines. Ancient humans outsourced it to the sky. Archaeologists believe some of the earliest evidence of systematic time awareness may stretch back tens of thousands of years. In 1972, archaeologist Alexander Marshak studied a small carved bone discovered in Ishango near the border of modern Congo and Uganda. The artifact is around 20,000 years old and covered in carefully organized notches. Marshak argued that these markings may represent lunar tracking, possibly one of humanity's earliest known attempts to record recurring time cycles. Not everyone agrees with his interpretation. Some archaeologists think the marks were mathematical or symbolic instead. But the important detail is this. Even in the Ice Age, humans were already obsessively tracking repeating patterns, and the moon was one of the most obvious patterns in existence. Every 29.5 days, the lunar cycle repeats with perfect reliability. To ancient humans, this was more than beautiful. It was useful. Moonlight affected hunting visibility, nocturnal predators, fishing conditions, tides near coastlines, and seasonal behavior in animals. Many traditional societies across Africa, Australia, and the Pacific continued using lunar calendars well into the modern era because moon phases genuinely mattered for survival. But the moon was only the beginning. The real master clock was the sun. Modern humans barely notice the movement of sunlight anymore because we spend most of our lives indoors under artificial illumination. Some people wake before sunrise, commute inside vehicles, work under fluorescent lighting all day, and return home after dark without ever truly observing the sky. Your ancestors lived differently. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups like the Hadza of Tanzania or the San People of the Kalahari Desert have documented extraordinary environmental awareness. Individuals can estimate time surprisingly accurately using shadow length, air temperature, insect activity, bird calls, and the position of sunlight alone. To modern people, this sounds almost supernatural. But it wasn't magic. It was adaptation. For hundreds of thousands of years, the human brain evolved inside natural cycles of light and darkness. Before artificial illumination, sunlight structured nearly every aspect of life. Morning light triggered activity. Midday heat influenced hunting behavior. Sunset signaled danger. And unlike us, ancient humans could not ignore these signals. The archaeological record suggests that humans became increasingly sophisticated at tracking solar movement as societies grew more complex. One of the most famous examples is Stonehenge in England. Built in stages beginning roughly 5,000 years ago, the monument aligns closely with the summer solstice sunrise and winter solstice sunset. Every year, sunlight passes through specific stones with remarkable precision. Stonehenge was not unique. At Newgrange in Ireland, a massive Neolithic tomb older than the pyramids of Egypt was constructed, so that during the winter solstice, a narrow beam of sunlight travels through a roof box and illuminates the inner chamber for only a few minutes each year. Think about what that means. Ancient humans were not merely watching the sky casually. They were engineering architecture around astronomical events with astonishing accuracy long before modern instruments existed. Why? Because knowing time meant knowing survival. Winter solstices mattered because they marked the gradual return of longer days. Seasonal solar shifts determined migration routes, planting periods, and animal behavior. In agricultural societies, a mistake in timing could destroy an entire harvest. But even before agriculture, humans were already synchronized with natural cycles in ways modern people rarely experience anymore. And strangely enough, your body still remembers some of this ancient system. Deep inside your brain sits a tiny cluster of roughly 20,000 neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Scientists discovered that this structure acts as the body's master biological clock. It regulates sleep cycles, hormone release, body temperature, alertness, digestion, and even immune function. You are carrying ancient timekeeping machinery inside your skull. Researchers in chronobiology, the scientific study of biological rhythms, discovered that humans naturally synchronize themselves with sunlight even when they try not to. In the 1960s and 70s, scientists conducted experiments placing volunteers in caves completely isolated from clocks and natural daylight. One famous series of experiments involved French geologist Michel Siffre, who spent months underground without any external time cues. Something fascinating happened. Without clocks, Siffre's perception of time began drifting dramatically. Days stretched and compressed psychologically. Sometimes he believed only a few days had passed when weeks had actually gone by. But his body still maintained rhythmic biological cycles. Even without modern clocks, the human brain kept trying to organize life into repeating patterns. This reveals something important about ancient humans. They may not have measured time numerically, but they absolutely experienced rhythm biologically, and nowhere was this more powerful than at night. Modern cities have almost erased true darkness from human experience. Streetlights, billboards, apartment windows, headlights, and glowing screens create permanent artificial twilight across much of the planet. Scientists estimate that over 80% of humanity now lives under light-polluted skies. But our ancient nights were unimaginably dark. No highways, no electricity, no distant city glow on the horizon. Once the fire dimmed, darkness became nearly absolute. Under those conditions, the stars were overwhelming. The Milky Way was not a faint band barely visible outside cities. It stretched across the sky with enough brightness to cast shadows under ideal conditions. Ancient humans lived beneath a universe modern people almost never see, and because the night sky was so visible, it became one of humanity's greatest sources of information. The ancient Egyptians tracked the heliacal rising of Sirius to predict the flooding of the Nile. Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean using star paths memorized over generations. Aboriginal Australian traditions preserved astonishingly detailed astronomical knowledge encoded into oral storytelling. Some researchers even argue that many myths originally functioned partly as mnemonic systems for remembering celestial cycles. The sky became humanity's oldest library. And then something changed. Beginning in medieval Europe, mechanical clocks slowly transformed humanity's relationship with time itself. Before mechanical timekeeping, most societies organized life loosely around natural rhythms: sunrise, midday, sunset, seasons, church bells, and environmental conditions. But once clocks spread into cities, time became measurable in a completely new way. Hours became standardized, then minutes, then eventually seconds. Historians like Lewis Mumford argued that the mechanical clock may have changed civilization more profoundly than the steam engine because it fundamentally altered how humans organized existence. Work could now be scheduled precisely. Labor became quantifiable. Productivity became measurable. Time stopped feeling alive. It became numerical. And then industrialization accelerated everything. Factories required synchronized labor. Railroads required standardized timetables. Electric lighting extended work hours beyond sunset. Suddenly humans were no longer sleeping, eating, and working according to natural light cycles. They were obeying machines. And biologically, the human body never fully adapted. In modern sleep science, researchers have repeatedly demonstrated how strongly humans remain tied to natural light exposure despite modern technology. Studies by scientists like Charles Czeisler at Harvard Medical School showed that artificial light can significantly delay melatonin production, disrupting circadian rhythms that evolved over millions of years. Your brain still interprets light as information about time. Blue light from phones and LED screens is especially powerful because its wavelength closely resembles daylight. When people stare at screens late at night, the brain partially interprets this as extended daytime conditions. In other words, modern humans are tricking ancient biological systems every single night. Researchers studying camping trips found something remarkable. After only 1 week without artificial light exposure, participants' circadian rhythms shifted dramatically closer to natural solar cycles. Melatonin production began near sunset instead of hours later. Just 1 week. That's all it took for ancient biological programming to begin reasserting itself. And perhaps that is the strangest part of all this. Modern humans think we escaped natural time. But we didn't. We simply buried it under electricity, schedules, deadlines, alarms, and glowing screens. Your ancestors probably could not tell you whether it was 9:42 p.m., but they knew when dawn birds would begin singing. They knew how moonlight changed hunting conditions. They knew which stars signaled winter approaching. They knew how shadows moved across the land at different seasons. They felt time through the environment, through their bodies, through the sky itself. Modern humans are surrounded by clocks and still constantly complain that time is slipping away. Ancient humans had almost no clocks at all, yet lived immersed in rhythms older than civilization. And maybe that's why modern life often feels strangely disconnected. For most of human history, time was not something humans checked. It was something humans belonged to.